can South Africa sustain the economic growth seen in the first quarter of this year? This is the question after GDP moved to pre-pandemic levels with a 1.9% growth in that period, announced by Stats SA just yesterday. Our business editor, Xolani Mbanjwa, filed this report.
The easing of lockdown restrictions has been identified as a major positive contributor to the economic growth of 1.9% registered in the first quarter of 2022. Positive economic activity was registered in sectors such as accommodation, transport, investments and manufacturing. But economists are warning that this growth may not be sustainable, as tough times in the coming months for consumers could spell weaker growth.
Our real GDP has returned to pre-COVID levels. However, we are worried that the mining sector on the productive side has held steadily, and the construction continue to shrink. And of course, the consumer has been one of the biggest boosters for the economy, continuing to spend really in the first quarter. However, we believe that for the consumer going forward in the second quarter, the consumer is going to be impacted upon by the rising fuel prices and food prices. So we're concerned about the expenditure side of our GDP, that going forward it may start declining and therefore return us to lower levels below 1.9, so encouraging for the first quarter.
Despite the good economic activity, this has not translated into more jobs, as 1.5 million people who lost their jobs since the advent of COVID-19 in 2020 remain unemployed. A case in point is the manufacturing industry, which increased by 4.9% in the first quarter, but is still 25% lower than it was prior to the pandemic.
The manufacturing sector has become a much smaller share of the economy, as other sectors such as the services sector has taken more prominence in our GDP growth. So going forward, with South Africa becoming a more services-oriented economy, we would want to place more emphasis on economic policies designed to ensure that we have employment in those areas. In terms of the manufacturing sector, we have to look at our level of competitiveness. And most manufacturers are facing high levels of wages, electricity outages, policy uncertainty, and as a result, that industry is taking a lot of pain.
The business sector says the government has a lot of work to do on the policy front to ensure a conducive environment for growth. And with this, the big question remains whether the first quarter growth will be sustainable.
We need to work on all the fundamental things that we need to do. Restructuring things that we need to be able to do, make sure that we get people the skills that they need, building a platform effectively that can give us these numbers that ought to be consistent. 1.9 is very little, but we need to be able to expect things like 4 or 5% growth quarter to quarter or year to year over a much more longer period.
While South Africa should be encouraged by the latest GDP data, analysts are concerned about the decrease in net exports and say the government must develop the political will to change the economic trajectory and become more competitive globally. For Newzroom Afrika on Channel 405, I'm Xolani Mbanjwa in Johannesburg.